When people talk about the UK economy, the language is almost always gloomy. Decline, stagnation, crisis, managed decay. You hear it so often that it starts to feel like fact. But if Britain were truly collapsing as an economy, the evidence would look very different from what we actually see. So let's slow things down for a moment, step away from the noise, and look at how the UK economy really works. Not emotionally, not politically, but structurally, calmly, over time. If you look at employment in Britain across the last 3 decades, something quietly striking appears. Despite the shocks of the late 90s, the global financial crisis, and the pandemic, employment doesn't collapse. It dips, it recovers, and it continues its long, steady rise. That's not accidental. It reflects an economy designed to absorb shocks rather than amplify them, one that bends rather than breaks. This long-term resilience matters far more than any single bad year. Economies that truly fail don't recover employment. Britain does, again and again. Zoom out further, and the same pattern appears in overall economic output. Strip away inflation, politics and panic, and what you're left with is a long-term upward trend. There are dips, yes, 2008, 2020, but the direction over decades remains consistent. Growth that's gradual, unspectacular, but persistent. That's the signature of a mature economy. Part of the confusion comes from how people think about production. There's a common belief that Britain stopped making things and therefore stopped creating value. But modern value doesn't always come off a production line. Today, around 4/5 of UK economic output comes from services, finance, law, engineering, technology, media, education. These are high-value activities that sit at the top of global supply chains. Britain doesn't specialise in volume. It specialises in coordination, in trust, in rules, in expertise. That becomes even clearer when you look at trade. The UK runs a deficit in goods, but a large surplus in services. Services exports are bigger, more profitable, and structurally harder to replace. They quietly offset weaknesses elsewhere. This isn't a failure, it's a model. And it's one shared, to varying degrees, by other advanced economies. The UK simply leans slightly further into services than most. That's not fragility. It's specialisation. London plays a central role in this system, and it's often misunderstood. London still matters, not because it's flashy, and not because it dominates by force, but because it's trusted. Financial and professional services account for around 12% of UK GDP and employ millions of people. The UK remains one of the world's leading financial centres, and British law governs a huge share of global commercial contracts. Money flows through places where rules are predictable, courts are credible, and institutions behave tomorrow the way they behave today. London offers that reliability. And that's why global capital continues to pass through it, even when costs are high and politics are noisy. Look at London not as a skyline, but as a network, a node, a place where ideas, capital, contracts, and people connect. It's less about buildings and more about relationships that have been built over decades. Underneath all of this sits something even more important than GDP or trade balances: trust. Trust is economic infrastructure. It doesn't show up in charts, but it shapes everything else. When people trust a system, they invest, they plan long term, they accept lower returns in exchange for certainty. That trust is reinforced by institutions most people never think about. Take pensions. The UK has one of the largest pension systems in the world. It quietly pools household savings and channels them into long-term investment. It rewards patience rather than speculation. It stabilizes markets rather than destabilizing them. This is slow money. And slow money is what keeps economies grounded. This is why the day-to-day economy often feels very different from the headlines. The real economy is lived on high streets, in offices, in workshops, in cafes opening their doors every morning. It's people going to work, businesses adjusting, systems quietly doing their job. Britain doesn't grow fast and crash hard. It grows slowly, absorbs shocks, and carries on. That isn't weakness, it's design, a system shaped by centuries of adaptation rather than sudden reinvention. So the real picture looks very different from the one we're usually shown. The UK economy isn't dramatic, it isn't exciting, and it isn't collapsing. It's resilient, service-led, deeply interconnected, and built on trust. Understanding that doesn't require optimism, it requires perspective. Britain isn't failing, it's functioning quietly, imperfectly, but reliably. And once you see how the pieces fit together, the noise begins to fade. This is how the world works.